It's a great privilege to be with all of you today at the Manufacturing Thought Leaders Summit 2026. At the outset, let me express my sincere gratitude to the International Research Institute for Manufacturing, especially Mr. Anil and his team for this gracious invitation. I am delighted to join such an accomplished gathering of leaders who are not merely participating in India's manufacturing journey, but are actively shaping it now. I'm also thankful for the opportunity to share some thoughts from my recently published book, Advantage India, Reshaping the Future for an Equitable World Order, and to engage with all of you. And I'm also excited about the prospect of having an interactive session after this, where I would be sharing some of the books with all of you. Manufacturing has always occupied a unique story of every great nation. Economies began with agriculture, but over time, now many of the economies have emerged into sophisticated service economies also. But history consistently tells us that every country that has emerged as a major economic power has first built a very strong manufacturing base. Whether it was Britain during the Industrial Revolution, whether it was United States after the Second World War, whether it was Japan during its post-war reconstruction, South Korea during the second half of the 20th century, recently China. In all these countries, manufacturing had served as the engine that transformed economic potential into national power. Today's summit, therefore, comes at a very extraordinary moment, not just for India, but also for the global economy. When I began writing Advantage India, I was driven by a central question. Why is this India's moment? Why, after decades of gradual progress, there is a growing sense around the world that India is finally entering a fundamentally different phase of development? The answer, I believe, lies in the convergence of many historic forces that are happening at the same time right now. Economic reforms, digital transformation, technological disruption, demographic change, and geopolitical realignment. These are all coming together at the same time, and perhaps for the first time since independence, India possesses an opportunity not merely to participate in the global order, but to actively shape it. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has actively articulated this vision in his vision of Viksit Bharat 2047, where he aspires India to be a fully developed upper middle income country by 2047, the 100th year of our independence. Many see this as an economic aspiration. Some others view it as a political slogan. But this is something much more profound. This is a national mission to transform India's productive capacity and position India among the world's leading nations. When we speak about development and developed countries, we often talk about GDP, we talk about per capita. These are obviously important indicators, but history again teaches that the developed nations possess something much more fundamental. They possess strategic capabilities, they control technologies, they shape global standards, they develop intellectual property, they manufacture products that the rest of the world depends on, and they build institutions that allow them to innovate continuously. Economic strength eventually translates into strategic influence. Strategic influence enables diplomatic leverage, and diplomatic leverage strengthens national security. Ultimately, comprehensive national power is built not only on economic size, but on technological capability and industrial strength. Power itself as a concept has evolved dramatically over time. Once it was measured by territory, later it was measured by industrial production, then by energy resources, financial capital, and military strength. Today, the defining currencies of power, national power, are also increasingly technological, with artificial intelligence, semiconductors, space technologies, quantum computing, advanced communication, critical minerals, biotechnology, cybersecurity, and energy storage, some of the key aspects. The countries that master these technologies will increasingly determine the future balance of economic and geopolitical power. We are already witnessing many of this transformation. Export controls on advanced manufacturing, advanced semiconductors, you see it all around. US is restricting the sale of certain high-end chips to China. China at the same time is trying to prevent the access of critical minerals and advanced magnets, rare earth magnets to some of their other geopolitical rivals. Supply chain diversification, technology sanctions. All these developments indicate that technology is no longer viewed just as a commercial asset. Now it is increasingly regarded as a strategic national infrastructure. Manufacturing, therefore, has now once again come to the center of national strategy, and it is no longer simply about producing goods effectively. It's about building sovereign capacities. India as a country has recognized this shift and has responded with a lot of clarity. Rather than focusing on a single industry, India is attempting to build capabilities across virtually every critical sector that will define the global economy in the coming decades. AI, artificial intelligence, is a key example. India is systematically building every layer of the AI stack. There is the India AI mission, where India is investing into GPU infrastructure, data centers, into LLM models, frontier and foundational AI models, then semiconductor manufacturing, and also our globally recognized digital public infrastructure. Through all this, India is creating one of the world's most comprehensive AI infrastructure ecosystems, and very few countries today are even attempting such an integrated approach. Semiconductors also deserve particular emphasis because they underpin virtually every modern technology. Right now, every single technological device you see around, from an aircraft to satellites, to smartphones, to missiles and medical devices, every single of those devices, it is driven by chips, semiconductors. And now we are trying to have an indigenous semiconductor program also, where we aspire to make our first high-tech chip by the end of this decade. The pandemic exposed the dangers of excessive concentration in global semiconductor supply chains. Today, almost every major economy is investing aggressively in semiconductor resilience. India is doing the same through fabrication facilities, assembly and testing plants, design capacities, research partnerships, and talent development. So, this is not just an industrial policy, this is a part of our nation building initiative. Communications infrastructure represents another remarkable transformation. Over the last decade, India has built one of the world's largest digital ecosystems. The rollout of 5G, expansion of BharatNet, indigenous telecom technologies, and satellite communications together form the nervous system of a modern economy. And India has recognized that without world-class digital infrastructure, advanced manufacturing cannot thrive. Defense manufacturing is also undergoing a very similar transformation. Historically, India had imported most of our military hardware. Today, the objective is entirely different. It is to design in India, it is to develop in India, it is to manufacture in India and export from India. Public sector enterprises, private companies, startups, MSMEs, research institutions, these are all increasingly working together to build indigenous defense capacities. And today, India is exporting defense products worth almost 50,000 crore to almost 100 different countries worldwide. Space is also undergoing another extraordinary change, and it is no longer the exclusive domain of governments. It now underpins communication, navigation, climate monitoring, agriculture, and our space reforms have opened unprecedented opportunities to the private industry. Satellite manufacturing, launch vehicles, downstream applications, and space technologies are creating enormous opportunities for Indian manufacturing over the next decades. And from the current 2% market share in the global space industry, the country is aspiring to have 10% of the global market share in the next 1 decade. Nowhere in India's industrial transformation is something as evident and staggering as electronic manufacturing. Not long ago, India imported the overwhelming majority of smartphones sold in this country. India is the largest market for smartphones in the world, with almost 900 million smartphones currently in the country. And at this moment, India manufactures hundreds of millions of smartphones annually. The iPhone has become an increasing symbol of this transformation. And right now, the iPhone has become India's most branded export worldwide, with almost exports worth 2 lakh crore in the annually. So these are the kind of rises that we are seeing. The same evolution is taking place in pharmaceutical products also. During the pandemic, India was one of the few countries that could develop its own vaccine, 2 different vaccines. And during the pandemic, the country could send vaccines to, again, almost 100 countries and pharmaceutical products to around 150 countries. The green transition also represents one of the greatest industrial opportunities of the 21st century. Climate policy is increasingly becoming industrial policy. Right now, sunrise sectors like electronic vehicles, advanced chemistry batteries, solar manufacturing, wind equipment, green hydrogen, critical minerals, and energy storage are collectively shaping the next generation of industrial growth. India is right now not just looking to be a consumer of these technologies. We are having a very definite policy to ensure that we manufacture them and we increase our exports to rest of the world. History has offered a lot of important lessons. Countries like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, China, they all have demonstrated that sustained manufacturing-led growth could achieve a lot of tremendous mobility economically and socially for its population. They all invested patiently in industrial capacities. They all climbed steadily up the value chain, and they all integrated manufacturing with exports, technology, infrastructure, and skills. India's challenge, however, in the 21st century, while we are approaching the mid of the 21st century, the first quarter, is considerably more complex. The other countries I mentioned about industrialized during an era which were characterized by expanding global trade, open markets, and accelerating globalization. India currently faces a very different international environment. Protectionism is increasing, industrial subsidies are expanding, and technology restrictions are becoming more common. Supply chains are also fragmenting, and trade is increasingly shaped by geopolitics rather than economics alone. India, therefore, has to industrialize during one of the most difficult global environments in modern economic history. India also faces another very unique challenge, and that is one of our biggest assets also, our young population. We are a country where our median age is 29 and almost 60% of our population is under 40. However, at the same time, every year, millions of young Indians enter the workforce. Almost every month, almost 1 million youth enter India's workforce. At the same time, a significant proportion of our population continue to depend upon agriculture, despite agriculture contributing a much smaller percent of our GDP. So right now, agriculture contributes only around 16% of India's GDP, but almost 45% of India's population are still registered as being working in the agriculture sector. So no democracy in, or even no country in history has attempted to transform such a large workforce at this scale while maintaining social stability and democratic institutions. Manufacturing, therefore, becomes much more than just an economic objective. It becomes a social imperative. It creates productive employment and can absorb massive amount of labor. It can raise income and support urbanization, and can strengthen our exports and increase our middle class. Services alone cannot support such a transformation, and therefore it is very important that manufacturing should serve as the bridge between India's demographic dividend and our economic aspirations. Despite extraordinary international uncertainty, which you are seeing all around, after the pandemic, now we are seeing many long-standing conflicts that have disrupted a lot of supply chains and economic activities. We see geopolitical tensions, we see trade disputes, we see energy shocks and supply chain disruptions. Yet India continued to remain one of the fastest growing major economies in the world. Inflation in our country remains relatively contained. Financial institutions remain resilient, and infrastructure continues expanding at a very unprecedented pace. Digital transformation is also accelerating, where we are the fastest growing major economy and the fastest growing digital economy for many years continuously. And this stability itself has become one of India's greatest competitive advantages. Increases domestic capacity is also translating into increasing global influence. Now, India's digital public infrastructure is being studied and adopted by countries across the world. Indian pharmaceutical products and vaccines have reached hundreds of countries. Our satellite programs are supporting several countries, including our neighboring countries and many others in the global south. And India is increasingly viewed as a trusted manufacturing partner, technology partner, development partner, and security partner. Over time, our economic capacity is gradually becoming very solid geopolitical influence. Now, this brings me to the most important transformation taking place globally, the emergence of a genuinely multipolar world. The unipolar era of the 90s and afterwards, it has almost come to a pass. Power is becoming more distributed. The United States remain the preeminent pole. China has also emerged as a very major pole. Europe and Russia continues to exercise considerable influence. And India is steadily emerging as another defining pole in this emerging international order. And India is doing it not through coercion, not through military alliances, but through credibility, capability, democracy, innovation, economic skill, trusted partnerships, and excellence, including in manufacturing. And this is why I, just like most of the country's youth, are very optimistic about India's future. The story of India is no longer just about catching up. it is increasingly becoming a story of shaping the future. The coming 2 decades will determine whether India becomes merely another large economy or one of the principal architects of the 21st century. Manufacturing will play a decisive role in determining the outcome. Technology will determine the outcome. Innovation will determine the outcome. And above all, entrepreneurs, engineers, investors, researchers, pioneers, and industrial leaders like those who are gathered in this room will determine the outcome. Governments can create policy, governments can build infrastructure, governments can provide incentives, but ultimately it is the industry that creates productive capacity. It is entrepreneurs who take risks, it is engineers and innovators who innovate, and as the workers who build products, as the engineers who manufactures and transform ambition into reality. So this is where I'm concluding, where I began itself. When I spoke about our Prime Minister's vision for 2047, it is not just a slogan or achieving numerical parameters like GDP or like per capita. It is actually something much more profound, which is creating a country that is technologically sovereign, that is economically resilient, that is industrially competitive and globally influential. It is about building a nation that does not merely participate in global supply chains, but increasingly shapes them. A nation that can develop frontier technologies rather than merely consume them. And creating a nation whose manufacturing strengths underpins its prosperity, strategic autonomy, and global leadership. History rarely presents a nation with a moment when demographics, technology, geopolitics, and leadership converge so powerfully. India has such a moment today. If we continue building capacities with patience, consistency, and ambition, I have very little doubt that future generations will look back into this period as the decade in which India decisively began its journey from being a rising power to becoming a leading power, a prominent pole in a very emerging multipolar world. Thank you all for your attention. Jai Hind.
We do have time for a couple of questions, so anybody has any, please put up your hand. We'll send a mic across to you. Anyone? There you go. Could we take a mic there, please? Please keep your hand up so he knows yes.
So good morning to all. My question to Honorable Speaker, I want to give some brief idea on energy storage, what India is going to do ahead. Because there are two options that they understand. One is battery storage, another is pump storage hydro. So what is the vision of India, I want to know.
Thank you for your question. I wouldn't go that deep into the technical aspects. I'm an engineer by profession, but at the same time, there are certain deficiencies in my holistic understanding of the industry. But our country do have a very clear objective when it comes to every industry where it can provide us an edge in strategic autonomy. Right now, when we look at the global scenario, three of the largest pain points right now are it's food, fertilizers, and fuel. So in all these three areas, there are certain crunches because of certain conflicts that are happening across the world or because of many disruptions in supply chains and so on. And India now, more than any time in the past, in energy sector also we are trying to ensure that we try to optimize our sovereignty. First of all, we as a country, we are a country that do import most of our energy requirements. So we are trying to, one, decrease our imports as much as possible. And two, alongside the imports, we are trying to create capacity as much as possible. So in that, there are a bunch of verticals in both renewable energy and non-renewable energy, where the country is putting definite focus to. So right now, the traditional plants, it's all expanding capacity. At the same time, you look at renewable energy from solar to wind to even upcoming technologies like, let's say, green hydrogen, even nuclear. Everywhere we are trying to produce more and more, where in each of these sectors we are trying to scale up our capacity exponentially. Just solar, in 2014, I believe, our production was just around 2 gigawatts. Now it has crossed around 250. Now nuclear, again our current production is around 5. And after the Shanti bill and all, now we are trying to expand it to 100 gigawatts by 2047. So one is energy creation. Then the other aspects of it, from distribution and storage and all, we are looking at modern technologies from more advanced batteries, and we will try to, make it as efficient as possible. But the technical aspects of what it is not something I'll be able to tell you. But I can guarantee you that we are working, the government is working under the leadership to create, full energy sovereignty through the whole spectrum. Thank you.
One more question? Yes? Could we take the mic, please? Zara aage aiye.
Yeah, good morning. My question is, as a India, we have demonstrated in terms of manufacturing capability and strength, and we are good in terms of developing the similar infrastructures on fuel and energy. How you see in terms of the AI, artificial intelligence, how are we in terms of innovations and upcoming investment to match the capability of developed countries?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I do believe that most of the guests and people who are sitting here are already working in various high-tech industries or in various industries. And I'm sure every single one of you would be seeing some of the impact that AI is creating in your own sectors. So right now, we can all categorically say that AI is impacting every sector. And me as a person, I would say that most of the impact is much more positive than negative, because it is making things much more effective. Right now, productivity is increasing drastically because of AI. And unless many of the Western countries and more higher industrialized countries, we haven't really started seeing job losses and all, because our technology cycle is slightly different, where now we are using technology still to enhance productivity and capacity. Now when you look at what India is doing, which is the core aspect of our question, that is what India is doing to stay competitive. Again, my view regarding the whole global AI ecosystem is that because of multiple factors, two countries now have a fairly big lead over rest of the world. And these two countries are the United States and China, because of many factors. Now you look at the top 7, 8 biggest of tech firms, like 5 or 6 of them are based out of the United States in the Silicon Valley. There are 2, 3 of them which are fairly big in China also, and they have certain unique competitive advantages. Now you look at AI also. Most of the frontier AI models are all based out of one of the two countries. But something which India is doing to ensure that we stay competitive and also gain a competitive advantage over time is we are trying to ensure that we have good sovereign capacity across the value chain. So you look at AI, different verticals of AI. One of the biggest advantages India has is the large data sets which are very diverse and large when compared to almost every other country. Like United States got, their companies got a global market, access to a global market. But India got a very diverse set of data, large amount of data. That now we are creating capacity across verticals, like we are creating data centers. We are in the process of creating indigenous chips also, that too very high-end chips, where hopefully by the end of this decade we will create chips of less than 3 nanometer capacity. Then there are different Indian firms, I'm sure some of you may be here also, who are working on different foundational and frontier models. India AI mission is already supporting around 20 of these startups that are creating frontier and foundational LLMs, including Sarvam AI, which actually had parameters that were very similar to some of ChatGPT's earlier versions. So there is a 1-year lag. So all across the ecosystem, we are creating sovereign capacities. And I would say we are one of the only countries that actually have a holistic view where the entire AI infrastructure, we are allotted a lot of GPUs also, like in the AI India Summit around 75,000 GPUs also we have allotted. So that entire ecosystem we are actually concentrating and building capacity. And we do think that over time this will play a lot of dividends. And we will be able to create a very good indigenous AI ecosystem in India over time. Right now, we are the third largest startup, we are the fastest growing digital economy. We are the third largest startup ecosystem in the world also, where right now, after United States and China, we have more number of unicorns than anywhere else. But most of them are working in certain sectors. Now, AI sector is expanding. And we are very sure that with many of the government initiatives and private participation, we will be able to be one of the leaders in this field also. Thank you.
Could we get the mic here, please?
Good morning. See, many countries around the world, they spend close to 4 to 5% on R&D, whereas we spend less than 1%. So what are we going to do to augment our R&D capability?
Thank you. It's a very good question, and it's something which people in many places have been bringing it up. I used to be in the Silicon Valley for a long time, and something which I saw there was holistic ecosystems, where you had universities that were getting a lot of support from various government programs also, but then there was an ecosystem of entrepreneurs, there were an ecosystem of venture capital funds, and finally products that were market ready, not just having patents, but something which could be market ready could have been created. So this is something which I saw there, and I saw similar things in many other places. Now, in India, when you look at R&D, like I'm not in a position to say the exact numbers. You may be more aware. But there is a certain gap. But we are again, as a country, like over time, this technology is one of the core areas of focus of our Prime Minister and the government. And all these areas I mentioned, now there are national missions that are created where large amount of funds are being allotted for many reasons. So it may not be very specifically mentioned R&D, but when yesterday itself 1.26 lakh crores was developed, it was allocated for the next phase of semiconductor mission. And I'm very sure that a large amount of it will be used for R&D, because without R&D you are not going to create advanced chips. And this is the situation across. So many of them, I do think that the numbers are not as, the gap is not as large as what, official statistics are, because there is a lot of funds that are going to create frontier and foundational technologies, which are not officially branded as R&D, but it is used for creating technology.
We'll take one last question from there. At the back.
I think yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my question is basically for manufacturing, we need to, at one end we are saying we need to have the manufacturing to be grown Indian in-house. At the other end we see we don't, manufacturing is like we don't get the right kind of people to work on the shop floor. So manufacturing struggles for the people. For obvious laborers as well as the people want to work on the shop floor. So how you're seeing this challenge to get resolved in coming decade?
See, ever since our Prime Minister started leading this country and the first year of the NDA government in 2014, one of the biggest flagship program that the country had been having is the Skill India program, where there is a very conscious attempt to skill and train our population in multiple avenues. Now there is a new education policy also where from a very young age we are trying to teach them certain core technical and technological skills also, which are practical for the industries. And the skilling program is also now being mapped with a lot of the employability aspects, where now various clusters are being identified across the country, like some areas are in textiles, some in petroleum, some in aviation, etc. And there is an attempt to link the skilling program with the other employability aspects. So over the last 12 years, the governments and administrations have been systematically working on it. It could get more efficient, but there is an improved, I would say the efficiency is improving. And like I already mentioned during my address, we have certain challenges, and that is our demographics, where because of our massive demographic dividend of, a median age of 29 and almost more than 1 million people entering the employment stream every year, every month, we have a lot of challenges in skilling and then placing them to actual employment streams. But this is a challenge which I am very sure that India will tackle, and we will ensure that the demographic dividend that we have, it becomes a opportunity and not really a, just a challenge.